Ladies and gentlemen, guess what? It's Friday, and we're here with your favorite guest, James Cadiz. James, I'm excited because today it's going to be encouragement, blessing, exhortation, and you all get somebody mad one way or another. I don't know how you're going to do it today because we're going to go into some of the weather conditions that are happening across the country, and there are a lot of people that are suffering really bad. In fact, people have died from this, so it's not a laughing matter. But there's so many things going. Before we get to that, I listen to these article types. Well, wait, say hi to everybody. Before we go there, say hi to everybody.
You're just ready to rock and roll, aren't you, bro?
I am.
Well,
I've got like a
hello
thousand
out
things
there in virtual land.
Hey, so your name is James Cadiz, and you are on Instagram. Is that correct, sir?
I am on Instagram, partner.
Well, I like that there. Yes, sirree.
Woo, doggy.
Okay.
You can do with me anytime.
That would be interesting there. All right, so let's get going. So this is from Zero Hedge. Polar vortex paralyzes Texas refineries, forced shutdown amid severe cold weather. We're going to get back to this whole issue because the electricity issue has been a big deal. James, we live in California. Every summer we go through the rolling blackouts, and it's been ridiculous. But they're going through it in this freezing weather, and it is just an absolute nightmare what's taking place there. Okay.
Well,
Go ahead.
I thought that we were going to be super encouraging. I guess a part of this is going to culminate to.
Listen, we're going to get to it.
It's going to culminate to something encouraging.
It will.
I saw an interview. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom. I missed you.
No, it will be encouraging. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, guys, sorry for those of you that are watching. Tom and I are dealing with just a tad of a delay here. So sometimes he'll talk and then I don't hear him. Anyway, you guys know how it goes. We've seen plenty of that stuff happening. But I saw an interview with Governor Abbott of the great state of Texas. And actually, no, it wasn't Governor Abbott. You know who it was? It was with Rick Perry. Sorry, the Abbott interview was a completely different interview. But I saw an interview with Rick Perry, who, by the way, very interesting. I thought he was the Secretary of Energy, if I remember correctly, in the Trump administration. But anyway, I saw an interview with him. They were going to talk about the subject of the electrical problem in Texas. And while his interview started, he lost connection because they had a power outage. So it just went to illustrate the craziness of what they're doing over there. And primarily the problem right now with what they're doing over there in Texas is they're coming up with the brilliant AOC idea of basically wanting to do what they call clean energy, which is absolutely ridiculous, green energy. Mm-hmm. And they're putting up all these big, huge, massive wind farms that are pretty much worthless because there's no wind. And when there's no wind, those things don't spin. And when they don't spin, moisture gets all around them. Things ice up. You get ice all over them. And pretty much they're done. They're fit to be tied. They can't be used. And so someone made the brilliant decision of turning around the electrical grid to rely on those things during a time when those things aren't working. Sounds like Democrat type run business, for lack of a better term, but that's kind of indicative of what we see are going on in our country right now. It's the same kind of thing, but it is really sad because people are dying right now. Yeah. By the way, more people have died in Texas than the so-called black people that have died at the hands, unarmed black people that have died at the hands of police officers in the last 2 years combined. Sorry, I couldn't resist saying that, but it's just true. And yet no one's talking about the fact that politicians have literally been responsible for killing people based on a really bad electrical policy. Well, it's really sad.
It is. Listen to this. This is one of my viewers. He's from upper state New York. One of our viewers, I should say, watches both of our programs. Conservatively speaking, you now have 20 to 30 million homeless. This is due to the power outages. Of course, the media is blaming lack of winterization of power plants. Not a word about the failure of solar and wind power. He writes this: the total destruction of Texas is no accident. Not only have they frozen, had their gas stations run out of gasoline, and their temperature in their homes, apartments, businesses, offices, etc., dropped into the low 20s. As the temperature comes up, the pipes will burst all the toilets, the sink traps, the washing machines, the dishwashers, sewer line traps, those millions of solenoid valves that automatically flush the toilets and turn on the sinks. Those fancy thermostats will get wet from the condensation and fail. You'll see waterfalls coming out the balconies of high-rises, ceiling failing, carpet ceilings falling, carpets and furniture soaked, electrical panels, and on down the list. And then much of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Mississippi, and other states will be unlivable. Then he makes this. This is a note from a headline of an article. America's just-in-time inventory system will with spare parts coming from China after they make them will not recover. We have neither the pipes, the fittings, the parts, or trained plumbers or electricians or mechanics to fix this. And then he writes this: Humpty Dumpty has fallen off a high rise and is being washed away in a flood of water and sewage. And so we look at what's going on. I think he was spot on in that. And this goes to what you're saying. You look at the decisions that our leaders have been making. And we voted these people into power. When I say we, maybe not you and me, but collectively, they've been voted into power. And you look, California has been the laughingstock for a long time about the foolishness of the trying to go green. The solar panels, the wind turbines are all over by where I live, out by the desert, and they don't produce what we have been told they produce. And now we're watching what has happened in Texas and so many other states. They're frozen. They actually need the fossil fuels to be able to get their energy back up. And it's just an absolute disaster. And you wonder, well, what are the decisions going to be made by these leaders? Because this obviously is killing people. It's literally killing people.
Yeah, boy. And it's really, really sad to see what's actually taking place. And it's something that, truth be told, in my heart of hearts, goes back to the same points that we've been communicating from the very beginning, right? And this is a result of really bad policy. And it goes back to the idea that a man was voted into office or cheated into office, is probably the better way of putting it, that is actually signing off on these policies. And people don't get it. You know, when we choose to not speak up about these things, when we choose to not get involved in these things, they make a big difference. People say, well, what do you mean, James? Okay, well, think about this. At the local, state level, the people who are making a majority of these decisions with respect to electrical policy or energy policy are the guys that are on commissions that nobody wants to run for. So what'll happen is they'll get a few key guys that don't spend much money on a campaign to jump in there. They're all very left-leaning, hard left-leaning, and we're allowed to do that. We're not sending anybody out there conservative to run against it, to be vocal against it, to say, hey, we'll drop your electrical chart, all of your extra taxes related to electrical costs. We'll give you better energy. We'll allow it to be available to you freely, where you have lots of it. That's not happening because we're not getting involved in those commissions and getting involved in those places of authority. It's the same argument that I've been continuing to make about people getting involved in their PTAs and their school boards and so on and so forth. I mean, listen, the fact that schools aren't getting back together again for their children is not because of the national policy that's being set forth. Yes, they're creating guidelines and so on and so forth, but it really is a reflection of the local school boards that are saying we're going to put a stop to this or we're going to open it up. And it just really depends. And what we need to do is we need to get some God-fearing people that understand the biblical principles of the ins and outs of this stuff to get involved at the school board and these other places where the real influence is taking place. And then it expands out to the national picture. And that's what people don't understand. They look at guys like Gavin Newsom. Thank you, Lord Jesus. He's about to get fired, right? And some of these other people, they all started at the local level. And had they been stopped at the local level, we wouldn't see the things that we're seeing right now. And that's really what this all comes down to. We need to start getting involved in those positions, in the city council positions, in the school board positions, the PTA areas, all the commissions, all those things. Those are where we need to get involved.
Yeah. So I look at all these different things that are taking place, and you mentioned Gavin Newsom getting recalled. You know, I mean, yeah, but at the same time, I mean, you look at the lineup of people behind him. You're going, well, what are we going to end up with? You know, so I mean, to me, there's a little bit of joy in it. But at the same time, I look at the future and I'm thinking, Yves, which direction is this going to go here? This is in the state of California with all the challenges here. But that'd be another program probably our viewers don't want to hear about.
Yeah, but I can tell you this. I think that there's enough people that voted that fire Gavin Newsom thing that are even Democrats that are willing to say, let's give somebody from the other party a chance because this guy completely messed it up. And the best part about Gavin Newsom is that man has aligned himself up with the politics of the national level. So people are fed up. Joe Biden, with one stroke of the pen, got rid of almost 2 million jobs. Immediately, he got rid of 70,000 jobs. Another, 1,930,000 are on the way to be lost, and they're going to be lost probably before the end of this year, right? And real people are affected by all this stuff. So they're sick of him. They're already getting sick of him. Even Democrats are getting sick of him. Lots of people regret the fact that they voted for that man because they didn't really vote for him. I mean, we all know the truth about that. But even those that did vote for him are going to be the ones that are going to say, I regret this. And they're going to go back and they're not going to want to associate themselves with the party, the most racist party in the country, that is a Democratic Party. So, truth be told, I just think that in this situation, we need to pray and we need to get involved and we need to speak up because if we get a governor in the state of California that's conservative, it could change the world. I'm telling you, it could change the world. Not just the nation, but it could change the world.
Yes, it could. Absolutely. Okay, I'm going to read some of these to you. And this just will help all of our viewers to understand the days that we live in. So we have Greece has this heaviest snowfall that they've had in several years. India has this, Africa, South Africa has a huge flood that's taking place right now. We have the failures we know in the climate green laws. These are all headlines. There's finally they're starting to report on the mental health issues from COVID. And then they're actually reporting there are medical dangers of wearing a face mask. They're finally reporting that. Of course, this is going to get buried. We have, stop me anytime you want, we have the EU vaccination rollout failure. It's just been an absolute...
Can I stop you really quickly just to ask you this question, Tom? Because I'm dying of curiosity. On the mask report, is it a mainstream media report or is it a kind of a fringe report?
On the mask report?
Yeah.
It is not a mainstream media report, and it probably will get buried, and it will never be picked up by CNN or even Fox News for that. So there you have that.
I suspect so. We had to hand that over to Newsmax and let the real news actually report something.
You know, I tell you what, I'll send it to you and forward it to them.
Yeah, we could do that. I bet you I could get it up to them pretty quickly.
I tell you what, as soon as we're done here, I'll send it to you. I do it now, but I don't want to mess up our recording.
Yeah. I got you.
So Israel, have you seen this with the Israel Green Pass, the COVID Green Pass?
No.
Okay.
What are you about to tell me? Here we go.
If you are, from what I understand, if you're vaccinated in Israel, you get a green pass, and that means you have freedom. The freedom is everywhere you go, you wear a mask, you do so, kind of like we do already, right? You wear a mask, you social distance that. If you do not get the green pass because you've been vaccinated, then you're only allowed to go to like the grocery store and go home. So
and you wonder how hard it's going to be when the mark of the beast comes up and all of that kind of stuff happens. I mean, look at how easy we're making this as a possibility.
Yeah, it's going to be
I'm not saying that this is the mark of the beast, but what I am saying is that, this is one of the talks that me and you used to have on a regular basis. Look, we know that the Bible is true. We know that God's word is going to come to pass, but how in the world is it? There's no way you're going to get somebody stupid enough who even has a little bit of knowledge of the scriptures that are going to be willing to do this. And sure enough, now people are just standing in line to do this. How crazy is that?
Yeah, they're wanting to do it. It's like, please, please, please. It's going to be so easy for people when they say, well, the only thing you have to do now that you've had shot after shot after shot after shot. You've had all these green passes. This is going to be easy. Now you just say, that guy is awesome. I'm going to worship him. And you mean I just get a mark on my forehead or right hand? I don't need a green pass. I don't need to wear a mask anymore. And I can do all these things? I'm in. I mean, it's going to be a pretty easy sell at that point. Especially when this guy comes on the scene with all kinds of miracles that are taking place and charismatic seems to have all the answers. People are going to line up for that. Okay, ready? Go ahead. Look like
no, I'm listening.
Okay, here's another one. Pestilences, another report, Ebola. Did you hear about that? Again, Ebola's making its round again in Guinea.
Goodness gracious, man. I must be out of it because I haven't even heard that news report.
Yeah,
Surprised. I mean, are you surprised?
Oh, no.
I mean, does it surprise you by any stretch of the imagination?
No, I'm not surprised at all. I mean,
the question is are they going to use that for power playing? You know, is it going to be another emergency that gets manufactured for the globalists to take advantage of to further propagate the whole idea of this reset?
Oh, Bill Gates has already been talking about being ready for the next one because the next one's going to be worse. And there's so many different ones, whether you use Ebola. I mean, we look at coronavirus, it's real. We know it's real, but the problem is it's not as deadly as we were told all along. Still isn't.
That's right.
We're hearing about state after state where the numbers have been dropping in cases and then that the inflation, it's been 1,600% inflation numbers the CDC has admitted just last week. And we're looking at these things going, but the lies are still out there through mainstream media. Mainstream media is the biggest problem in all of this. And so we're looking at that, and whether it's Ebola or one of the other millions of viruses, Bill Gates has said it's coming, and guess what? You better, I don't think the lockdowns are going away. So we have pestilences. Jesus said last day, pestilences would increase, but it's also tied into the manipulation of what we see happening in the world right now.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And again, I mean, look, I just want to reemphasize, we're not sitting here as brothers saying, hey, look, this is what you're going to see in the Bible. This is a fulfillment of what's happening. No, but we're looking at doors opening to make what we know will be fulfilled in the Bible much easier to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain scenarios right now that we're seeing come to play that this time last year we would have said impossible right now. I don't see this happening. I don't see it being put together. Now it's so obvious that we realize we don't have a lot of time left. It's unbelievable.
Well, I don't know if you remember this. Last year, it was in February where you and I did a little panel together, and we knew coronavirus was here. Am I boring you?
Oh, here we go again, bro. Are you really going to do this?
No,
Are you really going to do this? Oh, my goodness. Okay. Hey, listen. All right. So you've just now sidetracked us here. So how about we talk about this? So Tom is asking me if I'm boring him because I'm yawning. When Tom does it, he's messing. He wants to instigate here because he knows that in the last, I'd probably say week, I've gotten about 12 hours of sleep total in the whole week.
You didn't get that much sleep.
So he's being mean and cruel.
No, you got about 11 hours. Let's face facts. All right.
Maybe even 10, to be honest with you.
Here's another one.
Maybe even 10.
There's Pentagon admits testing wreckage of UFO crashes. Here's another one.
Went yawning again. Come on, say it. Come on, say it.
No, I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. I was looking at this, but my other eye caught you yawning. Sex change destroys life. But this isn't in mainstream news. And then we have what's going on. Now listen to this with Israel. Iran fires missile. Iran's just found a way to bypass Western sanctions and advanced nuke program. Surprise, surprise, right? Then there's Israeli Air Force holds surprise combat drill along border.
I'm sorry to say this. While Joe Biden, not to interrupt you, and I don't want to get beat up by everybody for interrupting you, but all of that while Joe Biden is saying that the Houthis are no longer a terrorist group, which their goal is the destruction of the Israeli state, just like Iran, because they really do come from Iran. They're making it a Saudi Arabia issue, right? And while Joe Biden is saying, let's get you back into the JCPOA. What in the world are these people thinking? It's crazy. Man, the haters of Israel are coming out, and the United States of America is about to be numbered as a hater of Israel. What in the world are we doing?
Zechariah chapter 12 is about ready to be fulfilled because of the United States of America. Then there's this. Israeli Air Force holds surprise combat drill along the border of Lebanon. You know, we see what's going to happen there with Hezbollah. And then we have Israel's northern front is heating up as Syria airstrikes in the IAF drill. So we have both of these things going on the northern border of Israel. Here's one for you. Ready? 5 ways that Biden undermined the Middle East peace last week. Can you imagine that?
Okay, let's do this because I'm going to see if I have them down packed here. Why don't we go over the 5 ways that he's done this?
Ready?
And while you're doing that, I'm going to change my background in a stand of solidarity just to be funny and to make a point. So keep going, and I'm going to change my background.
Ready? I'm going to mention this first one. Revocation of terrorist designation of Houthis in Yemen, which you knew about. Well, you knew about that, right?
and I've talked about it, and every time I see that on the headlines, I just get irritated. Okay, I got you. All right.
Distancing itself from Israel and Saudi Arabia now. They totally have been dealing with Saudi Arabia with a strong hand. Opposing,
and they're doing it because of Israel. That's the only reason why they're separating themselves from the Saudis.
That's exactly what's going on with the whole Houthi thing also in Yemen. It's because of Israel, and they're supporting Iran in that. Because the Houthis are the arm of Iran. Opposing annexation and settlement buildings. There you go.
Wait. Say that again. I didn't even hear that title. They're opposing the annexation of what?
And settlement building. You knew that one. Yeah, Biden opposing.
No. I know that was their intention stated when he was running. Has the State Department actually taken a stand with regards to the annexation?
Here it is. U.S. State Department spokesperson Ned Price issued a statement opposing, among other things, annexation and settlement building in Judea and Samaria. So there you go. These are remarks. I can't believe you could do 2 things at the same time and yawn. That's really, I like that picture.
Can I just say,
I like that picture.
Can I just say how disgusting that is? Forget the spiritual issue. Forget the spiritual issue and forget the biblical issue or the spiritual issue and the biblical issue for just 1 second. It's really stupid. Like, it's really bad business. Because what you're doing is you're inviting terrorist organizations that hate the United States of America to go back and to get even more. I mean, you're basically saying, hey, we want you to come into our nation and destroy us.
Yeah. So absolutely. So we're looking at all of these things that are taking place right now. And I'm telling you, James, we don't have time to go into all of them because we were talking longer than I thought we were going to about these, which is actually good. And I'm looking at this going, there are so many things that are taking place right now that people need to wake up. We also have just 2 more. Here's the other 2. Ready? Equivocating. I know you know about this. I think we talked about it last week on Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And that, again, it's dumb. Look, forget the biblical issue. I will bless those that bless you and curse those that curse you. It's from a military and strategic standpoint. You are stupid, Biden State Department, for doing that. Yeah. You are absolutely stupid because all you're doing is destabilizing the very demilitarized zone that protects American interests.
Absolutely.
Like, you're nuts.
Absolutely.
You're completely nuts.
Yeah, we've turned against Israel. I do believe we've made that turn, and I'm willing to go on record and say it even publicly. But I look at, and it's just going to get uglier and uglier. And also, I don't think all of our viewers know this, the whole area of Judea and Samaria, the UN and basically the world they call it, they've labeled it as the West Bank, when really it's Judea and Samaria. And they don't want to call it Judea and Samaria because when they do it, they recognize that that is actually the Jewish Israeli territory. So they call it the West Bank. They don't want to call Golan Heights Israeli territory. And they don't want to admit that Israel actually had Gaza and turned that over to the control of what we, obviously we see that Hamas. But that's the reality. And we are going to this, we're just going to Revelation Zechariah chapter 12.
I mean, they're just, listen, forgive me for saying this, they're just outright stupid. I mean, you're dumb. Look, these people that are part of the BDS movement that's going on in our house members. I mean, let's just talk about Beit Laham for just 1 second, right? I remember the days when Beit Laham was beautiful. I remember being in Beit Laham in 1993 or 1994, absolutely drop dead gorgeous. It was well kept. Why? Because it was being controlled by the Israeli government. When it was handed over to the PLO pooped, literally pooped all over the city, destroyed the city. You go over there now, it's a complete armpit. Yeah. It turned into a complete armpit when I came back there a year later, when the PLO had possession of it for 6 months. I don't even know listen, it's a biblical principle. And look, putting all of that aside, anytime, for the most part, most Muslim nations, now there are some exceptions, but that's because they're not Islamic fundamentalists. When they're not fundamentals of the Quran, if they do not believe in the fundamentals of the Quran, then you won't see this condition taking place in whatever area that they occupy. The UAE is a perfect example of this. Most of them are not fundamentalists of the Quran. They don't believe in the fundamentals of the Quran. And so as a result, you see a lot of wealth and you see a lot of benefit and so on and so forth. But if they were Islamic fundamentalists, that place would be an armpit, just like all these other places where they're being occupied. The greatest beneficiaries of Israeli policy as it sits today have been Palestinians who actually choose to be productive citizens in Israel.
Yeah.
When are we going to get that to our head? If we really want to help the Palestinian people, if we really want to help the Arab population, if we really want to take care of those people, and it's all about equality, as they would say, which, by the way, it's not about equality to these people. It's all about equity, right? It's more about getting the same outcome for everybody, regardless of the work they do, regardless of what status they have or whatever. It's not about looking at everybody as an individual, as we can recently see as what the new 8 white or 7 white, whatever. I'm not even going to get into it because I'm just going to lose my mind. That's a video that I'm doing tomorrow, and I'll just leave that be. But this is where we're going right now, and we're not taking responsibility for our actions, when in reality, if we want true, listen, let me just say this one simple statement. The number one reason why the United States of America prospered the way it did over the last 4 years has nothing to do with Trump's economic policies. Now, don't get me wrong. They have been brilliant. And on many levels, I think Trump made some radically brilliant moves with respect to economic policy, especially domestically. But perhaps the greatest contribution to the booming economy that we have, the greatest contribution to the astounding number of jobs that have increased, all of the wonderful things that we saw under the auspice of the Trump administration has been the administration's policy to embrace Israel and treat it the way we are biblically mandated to treat them. It's the state policy. It's the State Department's policy. What they chose to do in elevating Israel and doing what they did, that's why the United States of America has been so blessed these last 4 years. So the reason why we're going to crash and burn is going to be based on a guy who hates Israel. I hate to say that, but he's acting like he hates Israel. That's the reality.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much it's him personally, but I do believe his handlers, whoever's calling the shots. There's
I stand corrected. You're right. I agree with you. I totally agree. It's not Joe Biden. Yeah. It's the people that are, moving him around like a puppet. You're absolutely right. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, Kamala Harris the other day, she's calling world leaders instead of the vice president, instead of Biden. So that shows us that something else is really going on here too, with the whole presidency and who's really running things. It's not Kamala Harris, and it's not Joe Biden, and it's not Joe Biden either. There's some pretty powerful people that are running this. But I got to ask you this because we're almost completely out of time. James, I really look at it. I love your new studio too, by the way. That's so cool. You got different cameras. Gabe, we need to do different cameras. He's got really cool stuff. James, he changed the picture always up
we
there.
put a lot of time and energy and effort into building this thing, and we're very pleased with it. It came out very nicely.
Okay, I'm going to have Gabe change my picture to be of Jerusalem while you're talking. So here's what I'm going to ask you about. I look at Israel. I believe Israel's being isolated right now, and I'm looking at it with the decisions that are being made obvious just with the last few things we talked about. We didn't get in almost anything I was going to talk about today because hey, now look at my picture. There you go, right?
Ooh, I think I like that one better.
It's pretty cool. Nice job, Gabe. It's pretty cool. Okay, now here's this. Why, just for our audience, for those who don't know, I think a lot of people, even though they follow Bible prophecy, they don't know why Israel is important. Why it's actually what it is. Why do we talk about Israel? Why is the world's attention on Israel? And what does the Bible have to say about Israel? I know that's loaded. We can go on all day about that, but just in a couple of minutes, what's the big deal about Israel? Why do we go there?
Okay, so there are a ton of reasons. Let's just start on the basic level. Okay, let's start on the issue of or take this from the perspective of geography. Okay, then I will get into what God commissioned Israel to do, and which is very, very important, right? But just from the perspective of geography, when the Bible refers to the north, the south, the east, the west, it's always talking about the north, the south, the east, and the west from Israel, north of Israel, south of Israel, east of Israel, west of Israel. And in particular, the epicenter of it all is going to be Jerusalem. And the epicenter of that is going to end up being the Temple Mount. So everything that we read about in Bible prophecy is centered around Israel, particularly around Jerusalem, and even more particularly around the Temple Mount. That's why Jerusalem, Israel, is extraordinarily important, because it is, in essence, the center place for where everything goes, okay? The most fundamental reason, when we talk about it culturally, when we talk about it spiritually, when we talk about it even on a more fundamental basis, let's forget the relational, let's just talk about the functional basis. Perhaps the greatest and most important reason is because early on, God said that he would bring in an ancestrally chosen people, right? A race of people, and this has nothing to do with racism, okay? It has nothing to do with the color of someone's skin or anything. He ethnically chose to bring in a group of people that he said were going to be used by God to demonstrate what it should be to be a nation that is guided by him, and as a result of his guidance, to be blessed. So the idea wasn't to show off to all the other nations so that they could just get poo-pooed on and Israel grow in power. No, it was to be an example to the rest of the nations that they might themselves seek the same God and experience the same blessing. But in reality, Israel strayed from that. And since they strayed from it, everything that we read about in world history really does center around the fact that it is a reflection of God dealing with this people for the decisions that they actually made when they chose to abandon their role and responsibility that God had given to them, that God had placed upon them. And so it becomes extraordinarily important, because when we look at the course of world history, and particularly where it's going to go in the future, it centers specifically around God dealing with his people, because his people has turned their back on him. So we are God's chosen people as Gentiles, from the sense or from the perspective of the fact that we have received Christ in our life. We are the circumcised of heart, and we're going to go to heaven one day. And it's just a very beautiful thing. It's a spectacular picture that's drawn out for us. But the whole idea of us being God's ancestrally chosen people gets settled in with the Jews. So when we're raptured, at that very point, God is going to start dealing with the Jews, and it's going to be a very, very powerful picture of how he has worked with mankind throughout the course of history. So this is why Israel is so important. And of course, there's a million other reasons. We can talk about it from not only the Bible prophecy perspective and get a little bit deeper into that, but we can also talk about it from the understanding of how to develop governmental affairs, world policy, domestic policy, foreign policy. There's a lot of things we can learn from Israel. And matter of fact, it's very interesting. The founding fathers, when they wrote the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, got that from many of the governmental infrastructures that they were able to observe from within the context of Israel. And Israel fulfilled its purpose with our founding fathers in being a light and an example of what God had wanted. And they used that insight to be able to develop the things that they developed. You would never hear things like nature and nature's God. You would never hear about these immutable characteristics that have been embedded to us by God, and that we have a certain unalienable set of rights. I mean, come on. These are all things that are inspired by the scriptures, and particularly by paying very special attention to the governmental constructs of the nation of Israel as guided by the law and as guided by the Spirit of God in moving these people. And they were able to observe the errors that were made when people rebelled against God, particularly through the book of Judges, for example, when they see the ebbs and flow of what happens when you seek God, then you don't seek God, you seek God, then you don't seek God, and then looking at the proclamations being made by the prophets and looking at the constructs of the Old Testament law, you can very easily come to some very important conclusions on how government should go. And when we start looking at the branches of government, right, the 3 branches, not the 5 or 6 or whatever AOC thinks there are, you know, when you look at those branches, when you look at the executive, when you look at the legislative, when you look at the judicial branches, all of those were actually inspired by the Word of God. And people don't get that. You take the time to look at the story of Jethro and Moses, you get some of the stuff there. You go to Isaiah, you get some of that stuff there. But these governmental constructs that were placed together by our founding fathers goes back to their observance of Israel and how God dealt with them and how they dealt with the rest of the world. And those are very important things to remember, because it can be established very easily and proven quite effectively.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a great answer. Thank you very much. We are out of time, unfortunately, and I look at all of these things and many other things. James, I'm going to ask you to do something, because I'm looking at what's happening in the United States, and I know we have an audience that's around the world, but there are literally millions and millions and millions of people here in our own country right now that are going through a very, very difficult time. And just a closing word of encouragement, also how people can follow you.
Yeah, so let's start with the easy stuff first. And if you'd like to follow me, you could go to my Instagram page, and I would love for you guys to follow me on Instagram. That is growing, and I really would like to see us grow it, double that amount. The more people we get there, the better. Again, it expands the audience. So I would really appreciate it if you could follow me on Instagram. The handle there is James Cadiz. Please go there. That's James. That's common spelling. And then my last name is Kaddis. So James Cadiz. I'd appreciate if you can go there. And we'll add you to the little flock, as it's been referred to. And then, of course, you can join us on YouTube at Calvary Chapel Signal Hill. I'm also on Rumble, same thing, rumble.com/James Cadiz. That link is also going to be at the bottom of this show as it gets posted. So we'd love for you to join there. Here's the word of encouragement, okay? And I just really, I want to emphasize this. You guys see me get loud and you see me get excited. It's because of this one reason. I'm thrilled, and I'm really into the things that I'm seeing every day now. Listen, folks, we are living in the last days. We should understand that. We are living in the days where Christ is going to come for his church, and there is no better time for us to be alive. If you came to me and said, James, you have an opportunity to live during the time of Christ, I would say, that's wonderful. That's exciting. It would be really wonderful to walk with Christ and to be able to have that kind of life. But I'm living in the greatest Bible times ever. That's right now, and that's where I want to be. And I hope that you guys will understand that this is the greatest time for you to be alive. It really is. And I want you guys to not forget that. I want you guys to understand that God is getting ready to do some incredible things. He's doing them. He has done them. He's going to continue to do them. And as Jesus said, there will be greater works that will be done than, of course, the time that he was in. And of course, the reference to that was things are going to be done on a much larger scale. And of course, we have that infrastructure for that, right? Whether it be through the YouTube channels and TV and radio and so on and so forth. God is doing incredible things, and you get to be a part of it. So the encouragement that I would give you is this: pray. Ask God how he can use you to do your part. And you'd be surprised, by doing your part, you guys, you can change the whole world. I mean, imagine some of the recent movements that have happened in our nation or in our world. Those movements started with one person or with a couple people getting together and saying, we want to make a difference. And look at what God has done. And I know that God can use you in that same way. And in a world where we're seeing a lot of people being exposed as liars, people living double lives, all the horrible things that we've been seeing lately, we need more people who will live their life truly and openly and purely before the Lord, that the Lord would show himself faithful through us and that we could be a part of that. So that's what I would tell you. I would say just be open for what God has for you, because he has lots of great things for you. And doesn't matter what you're going through, what condition you're in physically. I mean, I'm a walking miracle. There's no way in the world I should be able to be used by God the way that I have been with the physical condition that I face every single day. When you see me squinting, there's a reason for that. It's because of a nasty nerve disease that I have, and the kind of pain that produces. But it's nothing compared to the miraculous movement of God in my life and how he's using me, and he can do the same thing through you. So go for it. Get out there, ask God to give you an opportunity, and be bold. And let me just say one last thing, okay? This is incredibly important. I have never heard of a soldier, a warrior, a fighter, anybody who ever did their job worth a dang who did not already consider themselves to be dead. You're going to go into the battlefield.
Yeah.
You should expect that you're going to be murdered. You should expect that you're going to die. And that's the only way you're going to be able to move with the kind of freedom that you need to be moved with to get the job done.
Yeah.
And every time you go out in the battlefield, every single day, reckon yourself to be dead and allow God to use you and watch him do great things.
Amen. I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. This life, amen. This life I live in the body, I live for the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Thank you very much, James, for another great Friday. Listen, everyone, if you want to follow me, I would ask you also on my Instagram. James is killing me on Instagram. He's got double the followers I have on Instagram.
You guys got to help him catch up.
What's that?
You guys got to help Tom catch up.
We're on Instagram. Also, these videos are on Rumble, not just YouTube. And listen, we're going to have our own server soon. I would encourage you to go to hopeforourtimes.com. It's our new website. We have a whole lot of things that are on our new website. It is fantastic. You can also contact me through that. And then finally, this Sunday night, I have as my Sunday night guest at 4 o'clock on Hope for Our Times on the YouTube and on Rumble, Brandon Holthouse. Many of you know who he is. I know because you've emailed me for a long time. When will you have him on? So he's going to be my guest this Sunday night. With that, God bless you all from James and myself. See ya.
We love you guys.
God bless. We're praying for you. Bye.